Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad, Tehami. The United Nations General Assembly has passed a resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. This particular resolution was voted in favor by 158 members out of 193, while 9 members of the UNGA went against this particular resolution, of course, including the United States of America and Israel. Now, the UNGA has also passed another resolution expressing its support for the work and the mandate and the protection of those of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees. What do both of these UNGA resolutions actually mean at this point in time, and what sort of message do they carry with themselves, especially at a time when since 7th of October 2023, due to unabated Israeli brutality against innocent people in Gaza, 44,905 people have been killed, while 106,257 people have been wounded. At the same time, UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says humanitarian aid to North Gaza is blocked for the past 66 days. On the other hand, we have seen Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, let me quote him, "I won't end the war now. If we end the war now, Hamas will return, recover, and rebuild and attack us again," unquote. Meanwhile, high-ranking U.S. officials, including the Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, are on a tour to the Middle East and will also be talking as to what could be the prospects of any sort of a substantial progress as to end of this particular war. 14 months of Israeli brutality against innocent people in Gaza. Could there be a possibility or a progress in that particular direction also? At the same time, Qatar, one of the mediating parties in these particular ceasefire talks, says there was a new momentum for negotiations created by the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, now the president-elect, will be taking over power on 20th of January. In a recent post has said there will be hell to pay if captives held in Gaza were not released by the time he takes office on January the 20th. All these important aspects regarding the situation as it is unfolding in Gaza are for discussion. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Air Vice Marshal, retired Ijaz Malik, Senior Analyst. Mr. Malik, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Baker Younis, Arab journalist. Mr. Younis, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Dr.Jamil Khan, former ambassador. Dr. Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Air Vice Marshal Mr. Malik. Now, this particular resolution, this is not the first time the United Nations General Assembly has passed a resolution of this sort, asking or demanding actually for an immediate, unconditional and a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. There was another resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly, likewise in a similar fashion, overwhelmingly in the support of a ceasefire. But what is the force of such a resolution? What's your understanding?
Yes, as per the United Nations Charter, the United Nations Security Council resolutions, they have a binding, whereas the United Nations General Assembly does not carry that kind of legal compulsions for the states or the conflicting parties to abide by. But definitely it does reflect the pulse of the people or the Committee of Nations, represented by 158 votes in favor against just 9 against it. So it reflects that how world views this almost 14 months old conflict, where it is almost a one-sided aggression against innocent people. But it would not make any substantial difference on ground, because the 9 countries which have voted against, other than Israel and United States, remaining are very small countries who do not have any effective role in international politics. So as long as Israel continue to have support of United States, they can do anything that they intend doing, and the Zionist agenda, I think it will continue to, progress as it has been seen. The brutal, kind of force application resulting into massacre of people, and it's a genocide. It has been recognized by all, it qualifies by all standards and norms of international laws and international norms that it is a genocide. So I don't think so it would make any substantial difference practically.
Right, Mr. Younis says this particular genocide is being perpetrated with such an impunity with the entire world. We've seen massive demonstrations across the world in university campuses happening on the streets of the major capitals. This is another time when the United Nations General Assembly, with a conscience of the Committee of Nations, has come forth with 158 members out of 193 asking and demanding for an immediate, unconditional, permanent ceasefire. While this genocide is being perpetrated, this case is there in the International Court of Justice. At the same time, the International Criminal Court has also issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Still, there is no stopping of it. Why so?
Because you see, still the United States, of course, it has the power in its hand. The Israeli have this domination that they think that they are the only people who, have the right to do this. And others don't have the right even to live inside Palestine. You see, the north of Gaza now is totally under siege. The north of Gaza has been almost, the genocide is taking, I think, the second or the third phase. The demolition of houses are continuing. Speaking about UNRWA, there's around 200 persons have been killed from UNRWA. I don't know how many, which kind of UNRWA they want to, have it again. So this genocide have taken its second or third phase now. It's 14 months of it, and still the United States says that this have to continue, which means now we are not dealing only with occupiers inside Palestine, but we are dealing also with supporters of occupiers, supporters of criminals. So I think the situation, yes, have gone really worse, and I feel that there is no hope anymore in all these resolutions because it doesn't have any effect. Palestinians, I don't think they would even if you say this news or give this news inside Palestine, nobody would even care about it. Statistics says it's 96 of Palestinian children in north of Gaza are feeling that they are just dead people. They are not feeling anymore that who dies beside them that he has been dead, because they think that all of them are to be killed soon. So this is the situation. We are dealing with I don't want to say that they're not a human. Yes, they are a human, but they are dealing with us as they have the machine, and they are just killing us with no any norms, no any value. And of course, a support from the United States is happening, which is very. The other thing which is very strange for me when I was seeing those countries would have, Paraguay and Argentina have also opposed this resolution. I mean, what is with for Argentina? Why Argentinians want Palestinians to be killed in Gaza, which is very strange.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there is a condition when it comes to the opposition such a resolution. It comes to that very condition of the release of the captives, as far as that particular view or the stance on the part of the United States of America is concerned. So rightly pointed out that why would Argentina and Peru won't vote for that? Perhaps they might have the same perspective as that of the United States when it comes to the release of the hostages which are being held captive in Gaza.
So because of those, what do you call it, prisoners, refugees, there is around 40 or 50,000 people have been killed inside Gaza. Plus, nobody said that they don't want to release the hostages. They say yes, we want to release them, but just stop the fight. Take your army out of Gaza, and then we release it.
So what's going to happen if the Palestinian resistance group keep on saying, first stop the war, first stop this brutality or aggression to the Israeli regime, then we are good to go to release those captives. And on the other side, Israelis say that first release the captives, and then perhaps we could go towards the ceasefire. So if this particular deadlock is going to continue like that, isn't suffering going to go on a bigger scale in the future as well?
The last investigation happened by the Israeli army themselves. They found that they have killed 6 of their hostages. Okay, which means that they are actually missiling everybody. They are not. Hamas and other groups have said, okay, give us, there's a mechanism. How you want me to release? You are bombarding me and you want me to release? So how it will happen? Stop the bombarding, withdraw from Gaza. I'll take it out for you. That's what they're saying. Otherwise, how you want me to move under the missiles and go and take the hostage, give it to you? It's not going to happen. It never happens. There's no mechanism. The movement is, you can't move inside Gaza. So how you stand out with your hostage and tell them come? Of course, the airplane will going to destroy you. Will bombard you. So the mechanism is not going to happen like this. It's very logic. Stop the fight. Stop the air force from attacking. Take the troops outside and take your prisoners.
Right. Right, let me bring in Ambassador Dr. Jamil Khan into the discussion also. Dr. Khan, every now and then whenever we have the discussion regarding us to the situation that is unfolding in Gaza, about the resolutions at both of the most important organs of the United Nations, the United Nations General Assembly as well as the United Nations Security Council, every time we get to know, and we know for a fact, that the resolutions which are passed by the United Nations Security Council have the binding effect and they need to be implemented as they've been passed. But as far as the resolutions of the United Nations General Assembly are concerned, they don't have that binding force. So if they don't have that binding force, naturally shouldn't we be questioning as to why such type of resolutions are being passed back and forth at the United Nations General Assembly when they don't have that legal force of implementation?
Well, that is enshrined in the United Nations Charter, Chapter 4. And in the United Nations Charter, Chapter 4, it describes all the functions of the General Assembly. So in its function, once it's passed the resolution, it would be non-binding. That was decided at the time once the United Nations was formulated. And at that time, all the 5 members, those who had the veto power, they had decided that if it is vetoed, then obviously it cannot be implemented. So 2 things here. This resolution of 12667, which was passed yesterday, it was in an emergency meeting of the General Assembly. An emergency meeting can be called by any member state, and then if it one-fourth of the total members, if they assent with it, then the emergency meeting is called. So in this emergency meeting, they decided, as you were describing, urgent cessation of the hostility, and then Gaza, and they emphasized that the compliance with the international humanitarian law and the protection of the civilians. So all these things are enshrined in that, and there are so many other ingredients. But it's not for the first time that the General Assembly has passed this resolution. It's not the first time that 2 weeks ago, United Nations Security Council, once the resolution was being passed, it was vetoed by United States, and that was also to bring cessation or ceasefire in Gaza. So, and then there are about more than 2426 United Nations resolution, in which there was only the resolution was drafted to give a pass for the humanitarian relief, but even that was not implemented by Israel. So there are 2 parts of it. One, that the resolutions are vetoed, and 2, that even if it's passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations or Chapter 5 of the United Nations Charter, Israel doesn't really care about it, and they don't implement it. What to talk of that? The mandatory provision, which is enshrined in Chapter number 7 of the United Nations Charter, ICC. All the functions of the ICC is given in that. And you have already described about the warrant of the ICC. And this warrant was issued after all what we are discussing here. The casualties, the humanitarian, the starvation of the people as a weapon of war, and the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, you name anything, which forms the war crime. And that is already there in the evidence before issuing the warrant. So what does it imply? It implies one thing, that Israel, so long as it has the backing of the most powerful country of the world, then they would keep doing it. See what has happened in Israel, what Israel has done. Last about 48 hours, more than 40 targets, they have neutralized the Syrian ships, all ammunition depot, which is the asset of the Syrian state. Ammunition depot, the aircraft, the bases, and all strategic locations have been bombed and destroyed. But there has to be some reason for it. Why all these components are all these sovereign states, Lebanon and Syria. All their assets, most of their assets are being destroyed. The reason is, and Hamas, you have already discussed the kind of bombardment, 85 to 90% of the houses have razed to the ground. And the casualties you have already enumerated, 45,000 almost, with the difference of 200. And it's going to be 50,000. It's going to be 100,000 if people do not react. If the world only keeps passing resolution in the General Assembly and the world population with a very soft heart and a humane heart, if they keep coming on the roads like a flood of people around, but does it make any difference? Because those countries who are under the influence of Israel and the Israeli lobby, then in that case, probably that influence would keep working on those governments. And once they come to the United Nations, whether Security Council or General Assembly, you will find that there would be an opposition. In General Assembly, of course, you already said that 158 countries, that is a moral victory. But does that moral victory save the life of the people? Does that moral victory save the starvation? Does that moral victory save the people and the kids from the starvation, from the dehydration? Last 60 days, UNRWA chief was my colleague while I was posted in the United Nations, Filippo Lazarani, such a dedicated person, and what he's saying, it's one shivers around the kind of state of affair in Gaza, and but there has to be some reason for it. Kushner says that Gaza is a very good strip, and it could be razed to the ground and could be rebuilt. Mr. Trump, the designated prime minister, it says that Gaza, the Israel should quickly have the victory before peace is brought in Gaza. Now, who would define what what means a victory to Netanyahu? Does it mean that no implementation of any Security Council resolution? Does it mean no implementation of any international law? Does it mean no implementation of any humanitarian law? So if it means that, then perhaps that would be the victory, which is being
Lead
announced.
us to raise some important questions. Naturally, if that could be the victory as far as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's perspective is concerned, and also that relentless backing on the part of the United States of America is concerned. You already mentioned that it's a moral victory. 158 members voting in favor of this particular resolution, asking for immediate, unconditional, and a permanent ceasefire. So doesn't that naturally lead us to question there should be an international organization or body that is more inclusive and more democratic? I'll come back to you, Dr. Jamil Khan, for your understanding regarding that. Mr. Malik, by looking at this particular statement by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that he's not even now willing to end this war, and he's calling it war again and again, which is clearly asymmetric. And he says that the goal was that the annihilation of Hamas, the elimination of its military and administrative capabilities, and objective is yet not complete. And if he ends the war right now, Hamas is going to recover, rebuild, and they are going to attack back.
Yes, in this campaign, clear-cut objectives have never been, defined. So, the very early stage, the statement by Prime Minister Netanyahu was that they want to ensure that the present threats and all future threats are neutralized in this region to the state of Israel. So, what constitutes future threat? The innocent kids in the hospitals, or women folk, or the people who need special care. These are the potential threats for them. How can they differentiate between a militant and a common innocent person? So this would continue because, unfortunately, as Ambassador Khan has alluded to, unfortunately, it has, blatant approval of United States, the sitting government and the president-elect. While during his election campaign, Mr. Trump was very vocal about ending the war, and he had been blaming Biden administration for, creating war and supporting war all over the globe. But and people were hoping that the war, particularly the conflict in Middle East and Europe would come to an end. But the question remains that coming to an end, but at what conditions? And the answer was not there in his pre-election campaign, but while giving the statement which you have just quoted, that how aggressively he is demanding the release of 200 hostages.
And that is exactly the point. That is exactly the point. Before I come back to you regarding this very particular statement that the President-elect Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social, let me take Mr. Younis' view on this particular thing. Let me quote this. Mr. Younis, please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be all hell to pay in uppercase letters in the Middle East, and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity, unquote. So those who he is actually referring to have perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. There is no particular reference to that in this statement.
You see, now this is an open threat to everyone from a person who, of course, will have the most strongest army in the world right now. So, but I still, like me as a Muslim, I won't take it because, I know who have this life is in the hand of Allah, not in the hand of him. Mm-hmm. He might die today, he might die tomorrow. He may change in a minute. He can't say that I'll do something, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do everything. So it's not something big. This is number one. Number two, see, now let him do what he will do more for Palestinians. He will bombard Palestinians more than the Israeli bombarding. I don't think there's any more bombarding can happen.
But there was a broader notion during his election campaign that because he has got that anti-narrative to the war, so there was a broader notion during his election campaign that as soon as he becomes the president and takes over power over there, there are highly likely chances of peace coming back in the Middle Eastern region.
Fine. So either he will, I'm saying, come to the war, he will send the American army, American troops inside Gaza to take out the hostages. If this happens, this means one thing, that the Gazan people have destroyed the Israeli army, which is a victory actually. If Israel can't do it, and they need the American army to come, the superpower to come in, which this means clearly that the Gazan people have done it. They have destroyed the Israeli army, and this is a victory. I don't think now, it's a very small number of people with a very limited, number of weapons. Israeli can't take it, which is the most advanced army in the world, but Americans will come to do this, which means this army, finished. So we are happy with this result. As a Palestinian, as an Arab, as a Muslim, we are happy that those occupiers, or as a human being as well, those occupiers have failed in their target, and they are in demolition, and they are actually coming back, and they are not going to stay anymore in Palestine. Americans will come. So let's come for the new generation. This be a new challenge, and Allah what will happen in the future.
So, Mr. Younis, recently we saw that there was a ceasefire deal with the Palestinian, with the resistance group Hezbollah over there in Lebanon, between them and Israeli regime. Why not that couldn't be a possibility between the Israelis and Hamas?
Hamas didn't say that we don't want to stop the war. They say, yes, we want to stop the war, but there is conditions. How can I stop a war? You as an army, you as a person who's stronger than me, having the weapons on my head, and you stop the war. How can I stop it? You're already on my land. You're already in my house. You already have killed my kids, have killed my family, and you want me to stop the war? You're the attackers. If you want to refer to 7th of October, I'll say yes, 7th of October, Hamas have did this attack, but just you have to refer also to 75 years ago when the Israelis have came and occupied Palestine. So you can't just say that, it's all because, where was Hamas in 1948? There was any Hamas? There was no Hamas. If there was any Palestinian rebel? There was no. There was only Israelis, gangsters who came inside Palestine and captured Palestine with the help of the international community, unfortunately. So they are to be blamed. Why you want to blame only Palestinians? They are trying to take the country back. Right. And this is something right for every person who is occupied.
Right. Mr. Younis, keeping aside the resistance groups and the Israeli regime, what about the suffering of the common citizen over there in Gaza who suffered and endured the brutalities since 7th of October 2023? They can't have the access to the very basics, the basics of amenities there, no food, no water, no supply of anything. What about that? When is that suffering going to end?
See, this suffering have been happening to the Palestinians again since 1948 and before, when they decided to occupy this land. So there's many, there's many stories of the Palestinians. How did the Israeli have killed Palestinians? And it's not, the history tells this. So it's not like today the Palestinian civilians are suffering. It's been long years. It's more than 75, 80 years now. So suffering is continuous. It will continue because, of course, you have an occupier on your land. He will do what he wants. There's no rules, no rights for us under the occupiers.
Mr. Baker Younis, Arab journalist, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Dr. Jamil Khan, those questions, those very pertinent questions rightfully raised by you already in your take, doesn't that naturally call for the establishment of an organization that is more inclusive, more democratic, when we've got that veto that has been the stumbling block as far as the ceasefire, any chances of a ceasefire in Gaza is concerned? 4 times the United States of America vetoing those resolutions?
Well, in 1948 also, as my brother Abu Bakr was saying, 1948, 56 villages and towns were razed to the ground and occupied by Israelis. And then again, 1967, the sovereign territory, the territory of Palestine was occupied, as well as the Golan Heights, which was the integral part of the Syria. And even now, last about 72 hours, they have entered into Syria against all international law and occupying Syrian territories on the excuse of having a buffer zone and right of self-defense and so on, and neutralizing the threats. So reverting back to your question, yes, the world, if they don't find any other solution, they're already working on one thing that is known as United for Consensus. There are about 60 countries. They have united together to see and to strive the reconfiguration of the Security Council veto power country. And they want to give some more countries and some more continents the veto power so that there are some balance in it. To what extent do they succeed? Because there are opposing groups within the member countries. They are trying to protect their interests. India on one side, Germany on the other side, Japan on the other side. So some of these competing countries for the veto power, they have a prosperant, the applicant. So they are the ones. But then sooner or later, if the world keeps suffering this, they keep suffering like this, the one which has happened in Gaza, tomorrow it can happen anywhere in any country. We have already witnessed Iraq, we have already witnessed Libya, we have already witnessed, now we are witnessing Syria, Gaza, we are discussing, and Lebanon ceasefire, you mentioned, but it's just for the name's sake. Ceasefire was signed, the agreement was signed, but Israel is relentlessly, they are bombarding wherever they want to in Lebanon. So,
what was the purpose behind this very veto at the United Nations Security Council? To what purposes was it included in this particular mandate of the permanent 5?
No, the agenda was to bring a ceasefire there and to release the hostages of the conflicting groups. That means that the Palestinians would get their prisoners and the Israelis would get their hostages. And then humanitarian aid and the development, most of the things were already covered in that, but that was vetoed on the ground that it cannot. They have to first release the hostages, and Netanyahu wanted to have a full victory before a ceasefire. So he has announced yesterday perhaps that he's not going to have any ceasefire in Gaza until he declares a complete victory. So therefore, the resolution which is vetoed, it was just to empower Israel, and why Israel is being supported to that level where the warships are already there in the area, covering the front of the Gaza, covering the Red Sea, covering all fronts of the Arab countries. The reason being that the other countries do not come in support of Gaza. There was only one country which was strongly supporting, and that all the line of communication very smartly has been cut off. All the axis of resistance, which could pose some difficulty for Israel against its atrocities, that has also been neutralized. And now they have a free hand to do whatever they want and wherever they want to go, because they know that now the the horizontal threat is gone. Only vertical threat of Iran still has some value. Vertical threat means the air threat, and that also it appears, if we connect the dots, it appears that sooner than later they are trying to attempt to neutralize that as well. So the veto power, in one line, in one sentence, the answer is it is just to let Israel to complete its agenda. And what is its
Is there any
agenda?
mechanism, Dr. Jamil Khan, is there any mechanism within the United Nations framework that if the committee of the nation has the conscious and understanding about a certain issue, for example, for instance, keeping this Palestinian issue aside for a second, any sort of issue at the global stage, for which 158 members think that this is exactly what should be passed in the form of a resolution at the major organ, the United Nations General Assembly. But such a resolution is vetoed by one permanent member at the United Nations Security Council. So is there any mechanism to bring in an understanding in the larger interest of the global community to take into consideration that understanding of 158 members and give it more weight as to the understanding of one single permanent member of the UNSC?
So that could be better defined, that what are the implemented clauses of such resolution. We have already discussed that it is a non-implementing, it is just a moral victory, but non-implementing resolution, non-binding resolution. We have already discussed, and I have already given you the authority of Chapter 4 of the Security Council Charter. So that is the international law. We can't help it out. How it can be done, why it is vetoed, we have discussed. But then Chapter 7, unless it is implemented, and that can only be implemented if it is not vetoed in the Security Council resolution. So this catch-22, it appears, would go on so long as Israel would have its full support by not only United States, but some more countries. But now, last 2 weeks ago, except for United States, all other countries have supported that resolution. So it appears that United States, so long as it doesn't, what can happen is Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. And what is Chapter 8? Chapter 8 gives the some authority to the regional organizations to maintain peace and to resolve the conflicts of the region and the area. So what they could have done, like, for example, OIC. OIC has been formed under Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. And if they wanted, collectively, they could have decided to impose sanction on Israel. And what kind of a sanction they could have done? They could have asked that we do not allow our airspace to be used to transport the weapons and the ammunition to Israel. We don't allow Israel aircrafts to really fly over our space. We impose the ban on Israeli products. And there could be so many to the extent that they could have said that we are going to go to we are going to have our own security component, and like NATO, there is a clause in the OIC charter, and they could have then decided to really have a peace force of their own. But I think none of these initiatives could be taken, and why it could not be taken, that most of the rulers of these countries, they are not
right. These are the options that could have been taken at that particular time. Now, since they haven't been taken, let me bring this particular point regarding as to the inclusivity and the democratization of the UNSC in particular towards Mr. Malik. Doesn't this whole situation call for more inclusivity as far as that very phenomenon of veto is concerned? Also mentioned by Dr. Jamil Khan earlier, there is a group of almost 60 countries which are thinking united for consensus regarding the reconfiguration of veto power?
Actually, the United Nations faces the same dilemma now which League of Nations, its predecessor, had. It was a total failure, and that is how this new agreed arrangement was done at that time. And your question about a supra body in the form of Security Council over an all-inclusive member states, collective will. And if you just see the structure of UNSC, the P5, there are all those countries who were at that time, victorious in the World War II, and they wanted to protect their own interest and give a lollipop or a feeling to the general global populace of at that time around maybe 3-4 billion, that yes, there is an all-inclusive body and there is a debating club in the form of United States floor of the United Nations General Assembly, where any country, regardless of its size and population or economic strength, has the same status as of a P5 member. So you can go there, talk about Islam, you can go there, talk about the human rights or anything, and the whole floor gives you standing applause, but nothing changes on ground. So we need to restructure this institution if it has to represent the community of nations. But the immediate problem would be that on what lines? For example, if there has been an option of extension of Security Council permanent members on the basis of the regions, for example, that Africa doesn't have a representation in this. Asia has one seat if you consider China, but and India is a very strong candidate because of its population size and the influence that it radiates. So and alliances and a very proactive diplomacy. So it will not be acceptable to many countries. So it's a catch-22 situation, and I think probably the world is waiting for another disaster that which will prove and which will hit the decision makers so badly that they will sit together and then evolve and a consensus to have another body. Why not? I mean, all these countries...
Another body with perhaps some other element that might be, after some decades, might be considered as a historical wrong, as in this case of this veto
because
phenomenon?
These are all arrangements, and these are arrangements conceived by and implemented by those who matter, who have authority, and who, basically whatever sugar-coated, charters and statements and very good, aristocratic English that we, write while constituting, the charters. In essence, the world, human history has seen that might is right. So we have seen at different stages of human conflicts that whichever side has, might, they dictate the rules.
Mr. Malik, unfortunately, we're short of time. I'd like to bring in this particular quote by the President-elect Donald Trump. You already mentioned his name. I couldn't take your detailed view regarding that. I had to go to Mr. Younis. Now, looking at this particular statement, whom do you think who has perpetrated these atrocities against humanity? What President-elect Trump is referring to?
He definitely, he is referring to the initiative taken by the Palestinians on 7th of October, which resulted into keeping or retaining or detaining these people as captives or hostages. Mm-hmm. So he is directly blaming them and promising them to face hell because of the American might in the region.
So what does he mean when he says there will be hell to pay if the captives are not released before his inauguration?
Our colleague, Mr. Younis, has said that what difference would American intervention in physical terms would make? I don't think so it would make any difference, because if it was possible to do a strike in a manner with application of air power and ground offensive together and having an ISR facility, Israel has almost same wherewithal and certain other advantages being physically in the region which American forces would have. So they cannot take out these hostages alive. They have to at some stage come on negotiating table, and only that is the only option for them to have a secure passage to these prisoners.
So we're looking at this statement. Do you think the policy of the Biden administration is going to be in continuity once President-elect Donald Trump takes office, or there could be a shift as per that broader notion during his election campaign? Also, when I was there in the U.S. to cover these U.S. elections, the states over there where there was more of Muslim and Arab population, for example, Michigan, one of those swing states over there. So that went in the favor of Donald Trump, and there was largely an understanding during among the Muslim and Arab population that there could be a shift of policy as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned if Trump comes into power.
Yeah, that was the expectation, and that was the incentive or motivation for them to vote for Mr. Trump. But now, if you are following the news those same voter and their representatives, they have shown their total disappointment on these statements which have been given post-election by Mr. Trump. So
you expect no shift of policy from that of Biden's administration?
But rather this timing of the takeover in Syria, it has given, and I think it would work as a catalyst to advantage of the greater design of Israel in the region, and Israel has started to show that in the form of moving in the buffer zone in the Golan Heights and the surgical strikes on war potentials of the state of Syria. So that should be an indication, because weaker, it is taken as a victory for Israel or and a defeat or failure of Iran and other supporters in the region.
Mr. Malik, point well taken. Unfortunately, we're short of time. Dr. Jamil Khan, very quickly, as to what is your understanding regarding this particular statement, another part of it by President-elect Donald Trump, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America, goes on to write in the uppercase letters, release the hostages now. What does that mean? Do you expect any shift in policy under him as to that of Biden's administration?
So far as the Middle East is concerned, there is no shift expected in the policy, because, as I said, that the Israeli lobby is very strong, and both the candidates have been claiming during their election campaign, and they've been trying to, take lead from each other so far as the support of Israel is concerned. So I don't see any shift in the policy. I know why people were not happy with Joe Biden, particularly the Muslim community of Michigan, as it was said, because the Joe Biden time they started, and Joe Biden time there's so many losses, the life of were lost. But then in Joe Biden time, again we have seen during the last term, and we can see what statements are coming forth, and we are not really expecting now that Israel knows that there is no challenge in the region, no challenge to Israel, so they can do whatever they want. So what victory?
Policy under Donald Trump's administration when he takes power as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned. Unfortunately, we are short of time, and I'll have to end the show right over here. Dr. Jamil Khan, former ambassador, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were honored to have been joined by Mr. Air Vice Marshal retired Ijaz Malik, senior analyst. Mr. Malik, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on this important show for such an insightful discussion. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.